Bene, buonasera.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the meeting. And welcome to this session together with a very distinguished guest we have here with us, Father Ballin, Apostolic Vicariate of Northern Arabia. Let's give him a round of applause. He will tell us what it really means when we say Northern Arabia. It is a very big country, 7 times as big as Italy, and life is not easy for Christians there. Father Ballin knows the Arab world very well for nearly half a century, and he will tell us about his own experience. He traveled to many countries. He traveled to Egypt, Lebanon, Sudan. He was appointed Bishop of Kuwait and then Apostolic Vicariate of this area, and he will tell us about the main features of this area. Tonight, he will tell us what it really means to live as Christians in an area where it is very difficult to practice your own religion. Sometimes it seems even possible to be able to do so. And so, what does it mean to practice your own religion in such a context? And what does it mean to be able to tell other people, you are good for me, even when for the other person, sometimes you're just an inconvenience, something which is not easy to tolerate. So is it possible to develop your own faith and humanity in this context? So what is the situation and what are the possibilities for the Christian people there? What can we discover about ourselves and about our faith in a place where God is often ignored? But I will now give him the floor so that he can share his own experience with us. You have the floor. Good evening, everyone. Dear friends, I decided to call you friends because I think this is the main feature of the charisma of Don Giussani. As a matter of fact, your name is Communion and Liberation. Friendship is the beginning of the communion, which gives liberation, in other words, life. And so I believe that saying communion and liberation is the same as saying communion and life. I am a Combonian missionary, in other words, missionary for life. And I was ordered priest in 1969, 47 years ago. Before I was ordered priest, my more superior colleagues asked me where I wanted to live, and they gave me 3 options. I said, first option in Arab countries, second option in Arab countries, third option in Arab countries. So if you ask me what I want, this is what I want. And this is why I have lived in Arab countries for 47 years. From a Christian point of view, We all know that it was not my choice, but it was just accepting what God, what the Lord wanted for me. Because He knew that this was my will, and He knew that that would be the best thing for me. I studied Arabic very hard for 2 years in Syria and Lebanon without stopping, not even for one day. I had a Muslim professor which made me fall in love with this language. After 2 years, I worked as a priest for 24 years in Egypt and 10 years in Sudan. Then my more senior colleagues highly recommended I completed my studies. I arrived in the Gulf in 2005 when I was ordered bishop in Kuwait, and only for Kuwait. In 2011, the Holy See reorganized the two vicariates of the Gulf, and I was entrusted with Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. It was a vicariate with over 2 million Catholics and an area of 2,035,149 square kilometers, 7 times as big as Italy. I have been living in this particular context for 11 years in the Gulf, and I'd like to tell you why it is so beautiful to experience the title of the meeting over there, You Are a Good for Me. First of all, who is this you? Why have I discovered that it's a gift for me? The you is represented by the 4 countries of the Gulf I am responsible for. So I'll go through each and every of these states, and I will tell you more about their social and religious situation. Let's start from Bahrain. It is a kingdom with a surface of 759 square kilometers and a population of 1,324,000 inhabitants, of whom 54% is represented by foreigners. The state religion is Islam. The government is run by the Sunni dynasty of Khalifa. After finding oil fields in 1939, an increasingly higher number of workers and experts came from abroad. On February the 14th, 2011, following the Arab Springs, a Shiite uprising started. The king started investigating, paving the way for a positive dialogue. In January 2014, the prince decided to meet with the opposition, and we've been experiencing ups and downs in trying to reach a compromise, including foreigners as well. Muslims in Bahrain account for 70%, Catholics 8.8%, Protestants 4.5%, Orthodox 1%, other Christians 0.2%. Among Muslims, 70% are Shiites, 30% are Sunnis. Among the non-Bahrain people, the vast majority comes from South or Southeast Asia, India, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. The Christians which obtain Bahrain nationality are around 1,000, and I do too. On February 2013, His Majesty offered me a lot to build a cathedral, which will be dedicated to Our Lady of Arabia. And on May the 23rd of the same year, I was offered a passport of Bahrain, as I've already said, which was a very important gift for me because it allowed me to travel to all the countries of the Gulf and to all the Arab countries without needing a visa, because I was considered as an Arab national. In Bahrain, but also in Kuwait and in Qatar, I always wear a priest's cassock and a pectoral cross, especially when I go out. Here we see a picture taken on the occasion of a mass on January the 1st in Bahrain. I always wear my pectoral cross and my cassock for two reasons. First of all, because I'm grateful for the importance and the acknowledgement given to our religion, our Christian religion, and for the freedom of worship that we have. And the second reason is because I do so to encourage Christians to remain faithful to their religion. Because many times they have the temptation to hide or even to change their religion in order to be treated in a better way. I can say that by presenting clearly my religious identity in the way I dress, I've been always respected by everyone. The Constitution of Bahrain does not ban people from converting from Islam to another religion. However, it is important not to try and convert too many people, especially for the social consequences that this would cause. Over the past 47 years, I have never converted any Muslim. I've only had 4 or 5 people who came up to me and asked to be converted. The first 2 people turned out to be spies, who were investigating on who wanted to convert Muslims. The other 2 people only wanted a new passport, and so this is why I never accepted any conversion. Let's move on to Kuwait. It's an emirate, and it has a population of 3 million inhabitants. Here in the picture, we see the Cathedral of Kuwait. Of these inhabitants, 2 million are foreigners, and the country has a surface of 17,818 square kilometers, as big as the Lazio region. The constitution states that Islam is the state religion and that Sharia is the main source of legislation. This is Article 2. Article 29 states that all people are equal in human dignity and in public rights and duties before the law, without distinction as to race, origin, language, or religion. Article 35 states that the state protects the freedom of practicing religion in accordance with established customs, provided that it does not conflict with public policy or morals. However, this freedom of worship does not affect the possibility to change your religion, and it is prohibited by law for a Christian to talk about their own Christianity to a Muslim. The Emirate of Kuwait is run by Sabah al-Akhbar of Sunni dynasty. Shiites account for around 30% of the Muslim population. Christians are around 200. They are Protestant, and there are 4 Catholic families. This small group, especially Catholics, are bound to disappear gradually through marriages and immigrations. Foreign Christians account for around 450,000 people, of whom around 350,000 are Catholics. The official churches are 7: Catholic, Anglican, Evangelic, or Copto Orthodox, Greek Catholic, Greek Orthodox, and Armenian Orthodox. In Kuwait, there are 3 schools run by Catholic religious congregations, and it is mandatory to teach Islam, but it is prohibited to teach to Christians.
In 2012, I was informed that the Ministry of Islamic Affairs gave his acceptance of the concession of a territory of 3,000 meters to the Catholic Church. But when this notice came to Parliament, a group of fundamentalists under Al-Munawwir, on the 16th of February, a motion was proposed in which it became illegal to construct a new church on this territory, and it was requested that the existing ones would be demolished. The reason was that Muhammad said that the Gulf needed to have only one religion, but the scholars inform us that this saying, what Muhammad said, regarded his competitor Musailam, known among the Arab as Al-Nabi al-Kadzab, the false prophet. And this now is applied to all religions that are non-Islamic. A delegation left from Saudi Arabia, where Mufti Sheikh Abdullah Aziz Abdullah repeats publicly the same affirmations. The newspaper, The Washington Times, comments on 16th of March 2012, if the Pope asked for the destruction of the mosques in Europe, we would have a war and a massacre among the streets of the Middle East and of the Gulf and in all the other countries of the world. But when the most influential chief of the Islamic world says the same, we have a universal silence. Despite these declarations, in practice, nothing actually changed. Actually, in January 2016, we were able to renew the rent of that territory, which for 55 years, since 55 years ago, hosts the site for the cathedral, for our cathedral. There were we were conceded other 10 years. In December 2013, the parliamentary Al-Amzi asked to eliminate the Christmas celebrations in all of Kuwait, affirming that they were making fun of the Islamic culture. And he said, to allow extraneous activities amongst our Islamic society is ridiculous and an offense to our religious teachings. Then he added that these celebrations were inappropriate in an Islamic state and asked the authorities to forbid them. As we had imagined, nothing was prohibited. In Italy, Qatar. Qatar is an emirate and has a population of 1,870,000 inhabitants on a surface area of 11,607 square kilometers. This is more than the Lazio region. The foreigners are 80% of the population. Christians are 13.8%. Of which 10.3% are Catholic, 2.7% are Protestant, and 0.8% are Orthodox. The Hindus are 13.8%, which is the sum of all the Christians put together. The Buddhists are 3.1%. All other religions are 1.6%. The Article 1 of the Constitution of 2004 affirms Qatar is an independent sovereign Arab state. Its religion is Islam, and Sharia law will be its main source of legislations. The Emirate of Qatar follows Islam according to the interpretation of the Wahhabita of Saudi Arabia. So therefore, it is impossible for any Muslim to renounce Islam and adhere to another religion. The Emirate tolerates the practice of other religions that are non-Islamic, especially Christians who are foreign Christians. The Catholics are between 200 and 300,000. Qatar is an emirate supported by the royal family of Al Thani, which governs the state since 1825. After the constitutional referendum of 2003, it became formally a constitutional emirate, which provided direct election of 30 to 45 members to the Consultative Assembly, while 15 were chosen amongst the noble. In 2005, the government gave territories and numerous churches, situating them one close to the other in a special appropriate area. They are the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, an Anglican Church, which comprises of 70 evangelical communities, Pentecostal and Protestant, Greek Orthodox, Copto Orthodox, and 9 Indian churches. Ultimately, or finally, a new territory was given to the Maronite Church and another one for the Protestant Philippine Church. None of these churches has bell tower or visible crosses on the exterior. The Catholic Church, inaugurated in 2008, obtained a territory of 5,600 meter squared and contains 2,800 people. It's very small. Since 12 years ago, every year a conference is held on interreligious dialogue, and various personalities from around the world are invited. I participate at this conference regularly, both because I am interested in the argument, in the argument, but also because I am Bishop of Qatar. The general director of this Centre of International and Interreligious Dialogue has his headquarters in the capital of Qatar. His name is Dr. Ibrahim Al-Naoumi, and he declared in 2014, we all agree with the fact that these conflicts are not caused by the fact that we're Christian or Muslims, but they are caused by people who use religion in a negative way that provokes conflict. Saudi Arabia. It is a kingdom. It is made up of, it spans 2,004,965 square kilometers and has a population of 28,083,000 inhabitants. Its Christians are 4.4% of this population, the Catholics 3.8%, Protestants 0.4%, and Orthodox 0.2%. The Islam Wahhabita is imposed by the dynasty that reigns of the kingdom, and other faiths they cannot have. They are prohibited in Saudi Arabia. The kingdom doesn't have a constitution. because it has the Quran, which uses that as its constitution. The Sunnah, the Islamic tradition, has a first place in importance in the formulation of legislation. Political life, social and personal life are entirely regulated by the Sharia law, the Islamic law. The Sunni Islam is the only religion authorized in the country, and no other religion is allowed, neither in public, in private, neither in the private sphere. This creates a lot of problems for the country because at least 1 million and 1.5 million Catholics are inhabitants, apart from all the other non-Catholic Christians who are all foreigners, and they don't have a place for their religion. They cannot have a physical place for their religion. The reason is that Saudi Arabia is considered a great mosque. Therefore, no other cult, no other religion can inhabit the country. The previous king gave permission to the Christians to at least reunite amongst themselves in private houses. But what does this mean? In Saudi Arabia, there exists a commission called Promotion of the Virtue and the Prevention of Vice. Promotion of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice, and it has the responsibility to survey and supervise behavior and, if necessary, impose certain Islamic norms. This committee has is like the religious police. It's famous. It has its own religious police, Mutawa, which demands respect of religious precepts. For example, fasting during Ramadan and other precepts. However, some of the powers of the religious police have been reduced lately. It doesn't have the power to arrest people anymore. It can only call the civil police, which is able in turn then to arrest people who disobey. This step forward, which for us seems very small, in reality is very big, considering the mentality, the very conservative mentality of the Saudi Arabia population. Centers of Islamic proselytization have been active to convince foreign residents in Saudi Arabia to become Muslims. A Muslim that converts to another religion is punishable by death. It is prohibited to let any books or other symbols of other religions to enter the country. This includes Bibles, missals, catechisms, rosary, medals, crosses. Therefore, the government doesn't allow priests to enter the country. Therefore, Christians are completely deprived of the sacraments. Finally, the various entry points of the country look for alcohol and drugs. I remember once when I was bringing into Saudi Arabia some Bibles and some missals of our faithful there. So they're big books, they're visible books. At the borderline, the taxi man said, when we get to the borderline, you're going to pass by yourself. I'm not going to be involved. The policeman looked at the car and said, in a strange English, "Where is das Reis?" And then he spoke to me in Arabic. "Where is your Rolls Royce?" I said, "It's coming, it's on my way, you'll see in 5 minutes, it'll be on its way." And then he said, "Go ahead, please."
Two new elements can help the Saudi society to improve and have a broader vision than they actually have. In 2013 was in Vienna the Center of King Abdullah for Interreligious and Intercultural Dialogue was created in Vienna. Its founders are Saudi Arabia. The founder is Saudi Arabia, and then Spain, Austria, and the Vatican. In the last meeting of the consultative committee, in which I work as well, we've highlighted some important issues on which we have to work, among which also is freedom of worship. In 2016, for the first time, the government has published its economic program. And the starting point for the new economic development was decided that it would be in 2030. Starting from that year, a green card will be issued only for Arabs, provided that they are Muslim. But I believe that this is just the first step, which will then lead to an extension of the green card. And this will help society change in a better way. After giving you a swift account of the 4 states of the Vicariate of Northern Arabia, let's now focus on the social situation of the foreigners, on the role of the church in the Gulf, and on how the church is structured and how they live the gospel. So let's move on to the social situation of the foreigners in the Gulf. After analyzing the main features of the 4 countries of the Vicariate in Northern Arabia, I'd like to draw attention on the social situation of foreigners in the Gulf. I will now quote Don Francesco Strazzari from his book Pentecost in the Land of Mahoma. He said that estimates are that there are more than 15 million of immigrants in the Gulf. 86.5% of the population is in Qatar, 83.5% in the Arab Emirates, 39.1% in Bahrain, 28.4% in Oman, 27.8% in Saudi Arabia. They mainly come from the Philippines, Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and Yemen. Generally speaking, they are not very cultured. They cannot read nor write, and nearly half of them are women. They left their own country in order to send their family money in order to live. They are attracted by people which aim at exploiting them. And so they depend on this kind of exploitation in order to have a stay permit or a visa. and they would do anything in order to do so. So exploitment starts from recruiting in the countries on the part of agencies and companies which do whatever they can in order to profit from their situation. In order to obtain the visa, they are willing to pay any sum of money. When, upon arrival in the country where they decided to go and work, these people meet with the agent of the sponsorship and they get their passport taken away from them, and they are taken to their workplace. Since they cannot speak Arabic, they are forced to sign a contract of which they do not know the terms. Sometimes this contract forces them to work 7 days a week without a day off, without any holidays, and with very low pay. So this is what Francesco Stazzari told in his book. The countries of the Gulf base their own economy on oil, and now, since the price of oil is decreasing, they are experiencing a lot of trouble. Many foreigners are fired by their companies, and they have to go back to their country of origin. Many governments are now concerned about how to find other kind of resources, and so they have increased the cost of the basic services such as water, light, etc. Some of them have increased the cost only for foreigners, which are usually the poorest part of the country. And democracy is performing also very poorly in the Gulf. It is true that if we analyze the situation in Italy, we see that even after 70 years of democracy and republic, democracy is often neglected. It seems like a paradox to say that, but sometimes the secularism find its own foundation in the evangelical words of Jesus Christ, who said, "Give back to Caesar what is Caesar, and to God what is God's." It is a shame to see that many policymakers do not realize that sooner or later they will have to stand in front of God and respond on how they manage the country. So it is important to understand that there's very little politics can do if there is no change. And so this is why we need to pray a lot. As for the Arab countries, maybe the easiest solution and the most tangible solution would be having a good dictator. I know it's a contradiction because it is very difficult to find a good dictator. But it is also true that the Arab countries were not successful. And so how will Arab countries be able to achieve democracy? Well, now I don't really know. Let's move on to the role of the church in the Gulf. The church in the Gulf is the church made of migrants. The migrants have a religious role within parishes and schools where that is permitted. Priests are granted a visa only because of their work in the parishes. Non-religious religious people are allowed to be hired by the church, and so everything is revolves around the parish, which becomes the center of some important activities. On May 2005, 2003, 2005, 2006, a very important Congress of the Anglican Church was held in Abu Dhabi about the traffic of immigrants, and it was organized by the Ecumenic Center Al-Ahmana of Oman. All the main churches, Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox, took part in it, and they realized that it is not easy to take action and tackle these problems. We need to change the laws, to improve the laws, and we need to speak up and in a clear way in order not to be misunderstood. We shall not forget that we are granted a visa only because of our job as priests. So only because of our job within the church. And so a religious person is considered as an employee of the church. And so he can be arrested because he is doing a job, if he does a job which does not belong to his religion. So it is important to keep visiting the prisons, the hospitals, the shelters, in order to help all those in need. But we shall do this in a very cautious way, as mentioned before. Inside the church. So up to now, we've considered the 4 countries of the Vicariate of Northern Arabia as for their social and political aspect, but also analyzing the religious situation and how it affects the situation of these countries. Let's now focus on the structure of the church in these 4 countries. And so we entered the house of God in Northern Arabia very carefully, because we know that that people belongs to God and we are only his own helpers. If I still want to live in the Arab world after 47 years, it is because I have met Christians and Muslims who have accompanied me in my life. I've never had any personal problem with Muslims. In fact, I have always found very sincere and true friends amongst them. After 47 years, I can say that I received a lot from the Arab world, a lot more than what I actually gave them. So I deeply believe, and I'm glad to say, in all honesty, that to any Arab or non-Arab brother, you are good for me. You have been a good for me for 47 years, and you will be for all my life. Our religious people come from many countries, as already mentioned. For example, in Kuwait, we celebrate Mass in 6 ways. Syro-Malabar, Syro-Malankara, Maronita, Copto, Byzantine, Ukraine, and Latin Byzantine. And we do the latter in 13 languages. And we do so only with one church. Therefore, our main problem is how to create a single Catholic Church respecting all the celebrations, the different celebrations that there are, and all of the traditions. And so not having 6 Catholic churches anymore. In Kuwait, for example, we have the same buildings that we were given 60 years ago, when the number of Catholics was very low. Now Catholics account for around 350,000 people. In every church, in every parish, we have, apart from the church, another building where people can pray. And so we can say that we do have a lot of resources, even though we have very few material resources. We also hold night wake once a month, all night long.
L'intercessione ininterrotta dei nostri fedeli è la nostra forza. Ma il loro impegno non è soltanto
The intercession of all the parishes, the uninterrupted intercession of our faithful is our strength. But their struggle, their effort is not only through prayer. We also have many charitable associations that they sustain, that they support, especially in India, students, orphanages, parishes, and other institutions. The residence of our faithful is linked to their work, their contract, their job contract. Having arrived at 60 years old, they have to leave the country and return to their place of origin. Unless, in the meantime, they haven't been able to acquire another nationality. Therefore, our church is a young church and, as such, very active, vibrant and generous. We are missing the age of young people of university, because the local universities are only for locals, they're not for foreigners. Therefore, we have a great population of children and teenagers and young people, usually around 30 years old, that return to the Gulf to work. In the Gulf, we are in a zone of transit because either for university students or for having reached 60 years, our faithful leave us. Therefore, our vocation is for the world, is for the entire world. We send people faithful in many places, and they are a wealth for and therefore the Gulf sends to the world a richness which is much more than oil, the export of oil, the exporting of oil. The challenge of every day is to try and host those that come and to have a profound experience of the of a great friendship with Jesus. My joy is immense when I find a Christian who is able to confess in his life, "You are Christ, the Son of God, of the living God. You only have the words of eternal life." This is the message that our faithful will bring to the whole world. Therefore, our mission is to form the supper table of Jesus, where everyone finds nutrition in the body, in the bread of life, and to share it even with Muslims. For linguistic reasons, mentality, traditions, the foreigners don't form a community with other Muslims. They remain segregated. Therefore, with them, for many hours, however, they stay with them. They are in contact with Muslims during work hours. It is them who who advance the interreligious dialogue in a simple and humble way. The dialogue of life, of daily life, not through religions, but among people. Not among religious arguments, but among people. Therefore, our mission is, yes, a zone of transit, but it is also a country where, through Christians, the love of God is offered continuously to everybody indistinctly, and therefore makes come alive, makes true the universal brotherhood, which is the ideal of Charles de Foucault. In this way, Christians collaborate actively for the formation of a society which becomes more and more human in the Gulf. We cannot occupy ourselves with many problems that are social problems, or either enter into their politics. But we are an integral part of this process of peace and of fraternal living together, which is reflected in the social and political scene. The Apostolic Vicariate of Northern Arabia is dedicated to the protection of Our Lady of Arabia, that she may help us to be the heart of God in the Gulf and for the whole of the Arabian world. Thanks for the very long applause, but I'm not the Pope. Oh, thank you very much. Because I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, but you've already anticipated by answering them. You made us understand what it means to really testify, to be a witness. I believe, as well as all of us here, I've been very struck by what you said. Because I understand, for example, that the Christian presence, is something much bigger than what I think it is, than what I might think it could be. It is much bigger, much more creative than what I think it could be. In a place where you can't even say the word Jesus. This must mean that Christianity is something infinitely bigger than a word. It is a life. One can communicate and testify to Christ simply living his life. His Excellency said earlier, my joy is immense when I see somebody say, you, Christ, are the only one who has words of eternal life. I am very struck by these words because this means that mission is something much bigger, much larger than I can imagine or grasp with my imagination. We send, another thing he said, we send faithful abroad. We send the richness of the faith in the Gulf. The dynamic happens in a way that we cannot even imagine. One cultivates a seed that is born in one country, and later on it will bring fruit in another country. And finally, I want to underline one thing. I saw incarnated. I saw in the flesh what Pope Francis has told us on occasion, in the occasion of the opening of the meeting. The word that we can't stop repeating is dialogue. It gives us a richness, and it gives us clarity on our own identity, and makes us available to enter into our brother's shoes, to ask ourselves, what is he looking for, really? We are all very grateful for Ballin, because he has shown us what this dialogue is, to which Pope Francis is recalling us. We have to thank him for this attitude of listening to the other, to understand what moves the other. As he said, 47 years he's been saying for 47 years, you are good for me. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you again. Since we have one or two minutes left, I'm going to ask him one of my questions anyway. I thought it was useful. I think it could be useful. I want to ask him, do you feel free in your condition? Are you free? Are you missing something? No, I don't miss anything. I don't feel an absence of anything. I feel very free. It has been 47 years since I've been there. And I don't feel psychologically conditioned by anyone. I feel very free. I have my work, someone else who uses a mobile phone and checks their email every day. They have another job. I have mine, they have theirs. We can see from his own face that it's true, that what he's saying is true. One time in Sudan, a policeman said to me, we received a report about you. Is there by any chance something I've done a crime I've committed that I didn't know of? We know that you haven't entered into politics, that you aren't involved in politics. I'm sure that if we stayed here, he'd be able to continue to troll out other episodes like these, anecdotes like these, but we must finish now. We thank him especially for the true friendship that he has with Jesus, and that he witnessed to us. Before I say goodbye to you, and before I say, I wanted to recall your attention to the fundraising campaign which continues, which wants to contribute to the construction of this place. So therefore, in the pavilions in the Fiera, you will see many different collection points for donations. This is one of the first things I ask you to take note of. At 9:45, the inaugural show will begin. Which has as its theme what can be born between people of different backgrounds. The three singers have different cultural and territorial backgrounds. And I invite you to go, especially because it expresses very well what we've just been talking about. The tickets can be bought in the Hall Sud. Thank you very much. Have a great time at the meeting.